What's going on? Episode 3 of Lakefront Empire Unpacked, talking about episode 5, which was titled, and offline we talked about this. We didn't really understand the title, but it's called Sink or Swim. Peggy's hands are full with two interior designers who have big dreams and even bigger opinions. We'll talk about that. Gerardo, the new agent, we'll talk about him. We'll talk about what he goes through. And Gerardo's up against legends that don't always like newcomers. And did he make mistakes and miss out on his first luxury deal? I'm Ramsey Stewart, real estater, and my co-host of this podcast that you might have stumbled across through YouTube or Spotify or one of those. My co-host, Jeff Fitzer Media. What's up, dude?
Yo! Can we just start this off by saying, first of all, thank you to those who have been engaging with us on the YouTube. We are engaging back with you. And Mike Durucky, how do I look? My camera's not so great this time. Same camera, but I can't afford fancy equipment like the guy in yellow.
Yeah, and what's bad is like I've got a little bit of a breakout issue, and I almost wore like this mask to go against the pores comment. And if you're not listening, like, or if you're watching this and you don't know what we're talking about, like, we can have as much fun in the comments on these posts as we'll have making this. So we encourage you guys to like, follow, subscribe, share, comment down below, because it helps us kind of understand where to go with this show. Speaking of where we're going with this show, I'm going to kind of drop some hints on some other things we got working on, and we'll talk about those. But yeah, we're back. This is our third episode, and again, we're talking about the fifth episode. So if you didn't see episodes 1 and 2, where we recapped the first 3 episodes and talked about it, kind of introduced ourselves and kind of got started, be sure to check those out. And then episode 4, we talked last week, was pretty cool. A little bit of a transitional episode, wouldn't you say, Jeff? And that we kind of maybe start to understand a little bit more about where they're going. Would you agree?
100%. Yeah, 100%. And I just told you this off camera. Contrary to probably unpopular opinion, I believe it's getting a little better. Maybe it's just growing on me. Maybe it's because I knew a couple of the buyers in episode 5. I know them well, great people, and we'll talk about that. Peggy was a little harsh, but I think she's actually warming into her role a little bit better. That's just kind of my take.
Well, I think for me, this was probably my least favorite episode. And I think it was my least favorite because nothing really happened. Like we did get to see Gerardo a little bit more. We kind of got to see some things, and I'll admit, it was nice to kind of have some of the same things happen to Gerardo that's happened to me when helping folks around the lake. But like, I don't know. I actually had a buyer for one of the properties they showed yesterday. So it was kind of cool to think and kind of look back and why my buyer didn't like those particular properties or that particular property. So that was cool. I like where it's headed, though. I don't want to be too negative in that, because I think we're on to something. I think one observation I made is this was the first time they didn't bring up Peggy's past. If you noticed, I don't know if that's the plan. I don't know if it was just didn't fit. But they didn't talk about that. We didn't at all see the Farrell brothers.
Nope.
And we kind of gave some spoilers in some previous episodes, but we saw that Sierra was having a baby, and she just had the baby. I think 2 weeks ago. I saw on Facebook yesterday, she posted pictures from the eclipse of the baby. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
We still haven't seen, by the way. We got Gerardo, which poor guy got just beat up by Peggy. I mean, talk about a bully move, but maybe that's reality. But we still haven't seen the other gal, other than in the previews. I'm not even sure what her
Right.
name is, because it doesn't even, when you're on the HGTV website, it doesn't even mention her name. It mentions everybody but hers.
Yeah, I don't remember her name right offhand, but I know we're going to see her in episode 6.
Okay, good, good.
That's the preview for next season. You know, I'm gonna dog on you a little bit. Normally we record this immediately following the show, so all this stuff is like fresh, top of mind, that sort of thing. And we didn't get to record last night because somebody wanted to watch a terrible
It
basketball
did
game.
turn out to be a bad basketball game. But you know what? The best part about that basketball game is, for those of you that are into college basketball, is one shining moment. That's the best part.
Yeah,
That's it.
that's the best
I
part.
couldn't miss
I
that.
will. I'm on a bit of a basketball high right now, watching the girls
Wow.
and folks watching this. I'm sure there's some of you from Iowa. The lake is flooded with Iowa folks. The Hawkeyes come to in droves. There's a couple good Iowa bars at the lake. If you're watching this, throw us a comment below about your favorite Iowa bar at the lake, because I know Lucky's and Woody's and all the different bars, like they kind of cater to the Iowa folks and Nebraska folks, that sort of thing. So drop us a comment and let us know where you're
As you're
from,
wearing a
and
Mizzou shirt.
MIZ
That's
baby,
right. DOU.
we're on the move, and we got big goals for 2024 and
Let's not talk
25,
about
man.
our basketball season.
Oh, we're not talking about what basketball we had, blah. Like we'll get there one of these days. We've never been to a Final Four. That's okay though. We're talking about football.
That's right.
Football's where it's
That's
at,
right.
man. So all right, let's get into it. Let's start unpacking the episode. We started off on HH. Now, for those who have never been to the lake, HH, really kind of a cool area, and they touch on it as kind of one of the first developed areas of Lake of the Ozarks, specifically Lake Ozark area in HH. And for those of you who don't know, like HH is dense. It's the densest part of the lake in terms of housing, condos, golf courses. Like that's it's kind of packed in like sardines. And it's always funny because when we're talking to folks looking to buy on HH, like you have to understand traffic on those holiday weekends on HH. It's one lane in, one lane out. There's legit value in living on Duckhead, where you have a light to turn off of HH to get out of town. Like it's pretty cool. But HH also's got some entertainment. It's got Little Rizzo's. It's got the Barbecue Smokehouse. It's got the cigar bar. Layton's is there. There's a Sergio's down there, and of course you've got H Toads and Shady Gators at the end of Bittersweet on HH. So HH is a cool area. It's all part of that Four Seasons amenities too, which is neat. They've got they're building a pool right now, indoor pool. You got a couple other pools. There's a couple private lakes down there. So just kind of diving in a little bit more than what they talked about on the show. But for those who don't know or have never been down HH, pretty cool area. But what did you think of kind of the first of it, what they started talking about, that sort of
Yeah,
thing?
and for those not familiar, I didn't mention HH is like the St. Louis spot. So as a St. Louisan, that's where, it doesn't mean it's only St. Louisans, but it's much closer to
Right.
54 and 70. So everybody coming from St. Louis tends to just be, they gravitate there. What did I think? I thought the first two buyers, also from St. Louis, ironically, I thought it was interesting because it led off by talking about how they started a new business at the lake and it's interior design
Mm-hmm.
type stuff. And I actually,
Right.
as I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, this is totally going to tee up for another lake show. And it reminded me of like the brothers and how they go into
Right.
these homes and rehab them. And maybe that isn't the intent, but it sure as hell felt like it. And
Yeah.
because dude, those guys, when I was listening to them assess each house, it's almost like they went in there in that first house. The guy was talking about the beams and how, oh, I would add these beams and I would do this and I would do that. It almost appeared to me like he wasn't even really talking about it for himself. It was really just trying, which is smart because basically they're promoting their business of interior design. So I read between the lines. That may not even be there, but that's what I took
right?
from it. That's what I took from it. I was fascinated to get their take on some of that stuff.
Right. Fun fact, that first house that they looked at with an awesome view was the only house I couldn't find in the MLS. And it was late. I knew we weren't recording right after, so maybe that's part of it. But that was the only house I couldn't find, because all the other ones we'll talk about, what's going on with those houses or what they sold, kind of like we do every week where we pick those out. But it was that house was cool. Like if you wanted to live at the lake and you wanted a very suburban style house with it's kind of had that tunnel view down to the main channel or whatever. So that was a cool house. I agree with a lot of what they said. I think I was surprised that the price of their renovation,
Like
I thought,
like
was a
seventy
little
thousand. Is that what
probably.
it was?
So they said between 75 and 100, and Peggy was coming 25 to 50. So I was kind of more on the Peggy side, but of course I'm a weekend warrior and like to do some of that on my own, or shop clearance for crap like that. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the other thing that caught me once again was the low budget. I think they said $250,000 budget, which just it's like you're just not getting much for that price point.
it's tough. Matter of fact, while we're talking, I'm gonna look that up right now, and we'll kind of discuss that, give some real world stuff. You know, they can be had. You can't find lakefront for 250,000 unless you're up in, like, sometimes 60, 70 mile marker up in, we talked about. Oh, funny, I haven't told you this, but last time we went on a rant about Climax Springs and how I would say just Climax and all that stuff. I actually had one of the Camden County officials shoot me a text and said they wished I would become the mayor of Climax, and they they kind of got a kick out of that. So we're seeing some reach, and that'll lead into some other stuff we're going to talk about later. But if you were looking at the lake right now, you wanted to buy a house on the water that was under between 250,000 and 350,000. So if we were looking like those gentlemen were last night, they were looking for a lake view with access, or lakefront, 250,000, and you wanted a house, not a condo. There's 21 possibilities for you right now. And they range there's 21, highest of 350, up on the 73 mile marker. There's one on the 8 mile marker. That'll get you 349.9, will get you 2 beds, 1 bath, and 910 square feet
Ooh.
with 70 feet of lakefront. So yeah, I mean, they're out there, but you're gonna deal with some stuff. That one's in the back of a cove. You don't have a big dock envelope. You're not going to be having, if you have a cruiser boat or a big boat like that, it's going to be kind of tough to have. But it's actually a really cool. Uh, well, one of the pictures is sideways. It's a little frustrating from a
Good job. Good job, real
consumer
estate agent.
standpoint. Yeah, but again, I explain now, and if you're curious about that listing and you want to chat, let me know. But the lowest, okay, so we did highest of 35 or 350,000. The lowest priced lakefront home with a view and access is over in Gravois Mills, and it's a mobile home, and it's 250,000. So just kind of give folks watching,
Or
like, those
Ramsey,
guys are
if your budget is that low, you can go buy a boat and live on it.
much like episode
2, I think. Yeah.
two.
Yeah.
Two. Oh, another fun fact. We'll jump ahead to. We're keeping tallies here. How many properties have actually sold on the show? Is it just a boat and one house? Is that it? Because nothing was sold last night,
I don't
right?
even think we have confirmation that the one house sold. I think the episode ended and it said it was accepted, but that's also how the last episode ended with the nudist swinger one, and it turns out that
Yeah,
wasn't sold. So I'm not even sure that we have success on any,
except
except for
for
the boat.
yacht.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, um, okay. Let's talk. Let's talk briefly about, or let's talk about. Let's unpack um, the Strix and their search for a lake home. And there's a lot to talk about, a lot to unpack. Let's go. And I know you have a relationship with the
Yep.
Strix, so you kind of
Yep.
know them. Maybe give us a little behind the scenes.
Yeah, good people. She's been real estate. He is been mortgage. They just opened up. They're doing like the what do you call it? The hormone type stuff. They opened up those places here in St. Louis. I'm gonna look that up. But just good people. He spends a little time in the gym. I usually, when we get together, I usually threaten him.
So do
I
I.
usually threaten him because, as you can see from my stature, I could take him. Um,
Oh yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
actually,
Yeah.
Steve, I know Steve better than Kathy. I know them both because Steve and I have worked at the same company, and Steve is actually one of the biggest teddy bears you'll ever meet. Super nice, and honestly, a very sweet man. So he's a great person. Kathy, both of them very successful. They're an absolute power couple. The name of their
Mm-hmm.
the name of their place is New Age Health and Wellness. They just
Okay.
opened at least one franchise here in St. Louis, and uh, like I said, you can just tell $3 million budget. They have a nice house.
Three and a half.
What's that?
Oh, three,
That
three
was the three
million. It
million.
was
Yeah,
3 million.
they already
Yeah.
have a nice house because actually when I texted them and I said, were you guys really looking for a house, um, or is this all for show? Because now knowing some of these people, I've known one of the people that had the listing, and then I've known now them, and he said, I'll tell you what his exact response was, but it was something to the effect of, if we could find the right place, yes, we'd move. But it's hard to find something that checks all the boxes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So imagine, people think money can buy you whatever you want, and a lot of times it can. But $3 million budget, you would think that you could probably, quickly find what you want at the lake, but it's not the truth. Their biggest priority is a place for Titus, their gorilla.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I kind of thought in the second house when they showed that eagle and like it teed it up, I kind of thought that would be the turning, that would
Yeah.
help them. But
Well, they really
let's,
screwed up. That's where Gerardo's really screwed up the first house. And that's where
uh-huh.
Peggy crucified him. They get down on the dock. They're pulling up by the boat. Which, as soon as I saw that dock, I was like, "Ooh, that's not going to work," because I know what kind of a cruiser they have, and then Peggy just beats him up on that dock. What'd you think about that? What did you think about Peggy? Kind of like, did you ask this? Did you ask this? Did you ask this? And poor Gerardo's just standing there like,
Well, I'm on team Gerardo and team respect the hell out of Peggy for doing it because um I was kind of thrown to the wolves at the lake on that in that regard. Like I understand. And it's you think like as a real estate agent, you think that somebody says they want to see a house and you look at 6 or 8 and you're like, hey, we want to look at these, and then you go through and you kind of start previewing them and get a better idea. But when someone says we'll meet you by boat, it does like add a whole new level of cluster fuckedness, um, in a way, because like one, it adds time. Two, depending on how well they know the lake, they could think that they're right across from each other and it's a 2 minute boat ride, when in reality it could be a 10 or 20 or an hour long boat ride, depending on what's going on. The boat that the Strix had obviously can go pretty much anywhere it wants to go when it wants to go. And so, they have some options there. But I think Gerardo handled it well. It's tough. It really is, especially like that particular property, that hillside, and like, like I would probably be, in Peggy's defense, like I would be pushing them not to come by water. Now you're going to make a fat joke because you're going to tell me that I wouldn't want to go up those. Hey, I'd do it, but we'd be taking a break at the top, and like there better be a cooler with some beers and waters in it because like I'm gonna be hurting, but we would have made it happen. So I say all that to say that, Gerardo's doing the best he can. And again, I'm going to keep giving grace where I think grace is due to these agents, especially like Gerardo and even in general, because like until you're in that situation, until you've done it multiple times, you really just don't know. And if I had, I can't, I don't think I'd like the pressure that Gerardo has. Gerardo obviously knows them from outside the real estate world, whatever capacity that might be, and doing your biggest deals on the lake, and you've never been there and you've never done one, it'd be pretty stressful.
I'm curious, actually. That's one of the questions, and I guess I'll drop that tease right now that we are going to interview Peggy. We are going to interview the Strix and maybe more. And one of the first questions I want to ask the Strix are, how'd you get connected to Gerardo? Did that happen organically? Did it happen through the show? Like, I'm curious because Kathy is a real estate agent. She owns a brokerage. So damn well they're connected. So, and maybe there is a connection there, and I'm not aware of, because Kathy's brokerage is based out of St. Louis and Gerardo's based out of Jeff City. So I don't know, but I'm curious to find out, and I'm looking forward to those interviews.
Oh yeah, so you go and ruin it. We were gonna try to do a surprise, and like I have all these things because I was gonna like ask you guys too that are watching. You want to have a separate interview show where we just have those people, and it's a full separate podcast itself, or do you want them to jump in on these kind of things? Because I think what's cool about what we're doing is none of this is scripted. I'm the one doing like the back end work and just kind of getting a better idea, but we're open to your thoughts. So if you want to tell us how you would prefer to consume that content, like drop it in the comments below and give us a shout, because I'm excited. We've also got and what's funny is this was a nerve-wracking call, but the shitbox lady,
The seller,
and
the
I
seller
think,
or the buyer?
yeah, the seller of the shitbox. I feel like I can confidently call it that and describe it that way because she was really cool to talk to. But we got her coming, so we're gonna have some fun. We hopefully will maybe get Sierra at some point. I know she's got a lot going on right now, but I'm excited for that. But let's get back on topic.
Let me mention that since I ruined it. My opinion, and so we're asking your opinion. My opinion is that we should continue to unpack as a separate show, and then we should do the unpacking of the people as separate shows. So Peggy, her own show, the Strix, their own show, the seller of the shitbox is their own show. But yeah, I'd love to hear feedback because it's not it's our ideas, but you're the one consuming, so we want to know what you think.
Yeah, please let us know. But let's get back to unpacking the show because you ruined everything, and that's what you do. And
such a
I'm pretty good
diva.
at.
Fuck.
Right. Well, I mean, it is what it is. But let's talk about the first property that the Strix checked out, and I was able to find it online. Listed at 1.95 million. It was over in Portachima. What were your thoughts on the house? They didn't, to my knowledge, they didn't really go in depth and kind of do the whole listing video of that particular house. The pool and the view were amazing, but even at $2 million, you see that you better have a good golf cart with good brakes.
Yeah.
Or you better be ready to walk up and down. So I think even Steve mentioned a couple times, blow up the yard with dynamite.
Well, actually, my favorite line, which I thought was very clever and funny, what Steve said was, "Why don't you remove the $10,000 toilet and put a $500 toilet in and spend the rest on the yard?" That was fun.
Right.
I chuckled when he said that. That was funny.
And I think that's one thing people don't understand is what the landscaping on lots like that, and like we have a little cabin, but it's been more on landscaping and seawalls and retaining walls and all that than our property's even worth, probably. So, but a cool house, great spot on the lake. Like, I think you could see it in a few spots behind them, like Lodge of Four Seasons, Encore that we've talked about, the toll bridge. We can even go down that path at some point. We got to talk about it. It's not really unpacked, but the toll bridge that's no longer a toll starting April 30th at noon. That's going to open up the lake to I think even though it was $2 and $3, still think that makes a big economic impact. And I'll be curious. Somebody much smarter than me will probably be able to look at property values and be able to tell you what that change is there. It won't be me because I can barely add 2 and 2, but so that house, and again, you could tell it wasn't a fit. They loved the pool and they loved the view. They didn't like the walkway. Can you imagine? Can you imagine like Saturday, you go out all day, you cove out, have a good time, and then you pull up in your boat? Like, I think I'm sleeping on the boat.
Oh, yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, I think just pulling up to that house again, Gerardo didn't know any better, and Peggy nailed it, man. I mean, that's a great example, and kudos to her because it was good advice. Maybe the way she articulated it to him came off a little cocky, but um, she's right. Like, you got to know that stuff because you got somebody pulling up in $1 million boat, and that's their first impression was a small dock, and I think it was only a one bay dock. And so, and he even said it, they have 2 boats. So it's like, what are you doing, dude? Like and then, that's just an experience. And he obviously good experience because he's going to learn by fire.
Yeah, but I'll go back to the side of a real estate agent. Like, their budget's $3 million. You're showing them a less than $2 million property, and you have the potential to put the dock you want with $1 million. Like, yeah, there's some value there. Like, it doesn't. That's what I think is hard too. And we've seen some of the comments, and we haven't even talked about that too. Like, I've got a camera roll full of screenshots from the Risque Resorts episode and social media locally and what people are saying. And someone compared Peggy to Hitler and the Holocaust. Like,
That's
really?
trolling at its best right there.
Right. Like let's be real. But we'll talk about that. We'll have some fun with that content. But what I say all that because as a real estate agent, like, part of our job is to kind of put opportunities out there. And I stress the word opportunities because I may not be able to convey to you via text or email or a phone call that, like, that dock could be replaced, or I could give you, hey, here's the property. We all know the equalizer was the terrain to get to the house, so we knew. But, like, I could show you that, and I could show you a used dock for 150 or 200,000 that would fit in that spot and give you a completely different outlook on what that property could do or could be for what you're wanting. Yeah. So, again, I think most of that was made for TV, but I also think that he's not really probably wrong.
Yeah. No, 100%. 100%. But, and I'll give Peggy credit on this episode, only because I'm harder on Peggy, and I look forward to interviewing her. It's going to be fun. But, I think in this episode, I would say more so than any other episode, she really displayed her knowledge of the lake. And not only between that portion of the show, but also she did what she, when she put that one couple into the boat, which was super creative. She also had some creativity on this show, which we're probably going to get to next, which is with the 2 guys on the last house that they actually put an offer on. But I don't want to jump ahead.
Right. No, I mean, we're there. The only thing I got left on the first house that the Strix saw was that it was withdrawn. It did not sell. So, that one's still out there. There is some opportunity with that one, and you never know what it would do now. But I think, like you said, like, we know they haven't purchased anything yet, right? We know they have a house here, but they haven't purchased another house. So, all right, let's go on to the 840 square foot home that Peggy showed. We got to see Sierra for a minute since she told the world that she was having a baby. Um, but let's talk about that little house. What did you think? Used to be a fishing village. Pretty cool, huh?
Oh, that was probably my least interest. I was the least interested in that segment of the show.
Okay.
I
Because
I just didn't strike me. I think it was the first house, and then the last one was what the Octagon house is, right?
right.
I don't know. It just for whatever reason, it just didn't. I could have just literally fast forwarded through that part of the show.
Gotcha.
What was your
Well,
pick?
I'm gonna. I kind of like that. Like that's that old school. What was cool is that house is very similar to what you find around Camdenton, Big Niangua. That style. A lot of resorts off of Double E on the Big and Little Niangua. There, you see a lot of that style. 840 square feet, technically lake view, but it had a dock
Yeah.
slip and it had its own dock. So kind of lakefront, yes.
That
Um,
that was that
so
right
in
there is creativity with Peggy. Because again,
right,
finding a home and their price point on the water is almost impossible.
hmm right, and I think they were really close. I those two and their skill set of designing and rehabbing, like I felt like maybe there was some cop outs for that house. Like if you knew you wanted to redo the kitchen and you got to add siding, like it's kind of comes with it,
Yeah.
like but I want to talk about that one though because that one was really cool location wise. You know what cove that was in?
No.
Frankie and
Oh,
Louie's
no shit.
Cove. Yep. So tuck back in there just as you come in that cove to the left there, kind of tuck back. Um, and that house was listed at 300K. Guess what it sold for?
275.
286. And when it sold, when it sold at 286, it did not look like it did on that show. Somebody had went in and painted and done some things, much more grays and neutral colors. So it took some work to get that one. But, that house was so typical of a lot of what we see because like, one thing that you see a lot at the lake and I probably know of 30 or 40 that I've had buyers that really like and they back out because of what the number one thing
Number one thing that they back out when they're at,
would cause people to like not feel confident about a property moving forward.
gosh, that could be a number of answers. I'm going to say the cost to get it to how they want it.
Yes and no, but it's the amount of deck space and the cost to get the decks to where they want
Also,
them.
what she said.
That
Also, what she said.
right. Right. That's something that like I have one particular buyer investor, like if the deck isn't like if they can't buy it with somebody already fixing the deck, they don't want it because like just the cost and the size of some of these decks that I mean, you come to the lake, you're going to be outside as much as you
Yeah.
possibly can. And so these houses, the terrain causes them to have a big deck. The view causes them to have a big deck. The size of the house, and you want to be outside and you want to entertain. Like that was pretty crazy. And then you add like, 286 for that house, but conservatively there's $25,000 in deck replacement.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, if you could say the
so yeah.
word deck and big deck about six or seven more times, and then my joke went right over your head, or you played it, scoffed it off real well. A big deck does matter.
I
It
don't
matters.
I don't know anything about big decks. Um, that's all I got for you. So yeah, but we saw that one sell for 286. Cool little spot, little 2 bedroom, 1 bath, I believe. Yeah. And so, it was nightly rentals. So someone looking to get in nightly rentals would have had an opportunity there because there's an old fishing village and an old thing like that. It was kind of set up perfect
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah.
So, but one thing they didn't talk about, yeah, it had water and it had a view and it had a dock, but that was a back of a cove, probably pretty shallow. Take some good with the bad with that end of things. So, um, we're going to talk about the Octagon houses because that's one that I had shown and been in personally. But let's talk. Let's finish up talking about the Strix and the quiet side / party side house that they checked out at the end. What did you think of that house?
Uh, it was interesting. It was an interesting house because it was divided from like upgraded to not quite as upgraded. Which the Strix, obviously, it was the ceiling height that really mattered,
Mm-hmm.
and it was interesting that mattered so much to Steve because I mean, I could see that it didn't seem like the ceilings were short by any stretch. They weren't
Right.
super tall, but I mean, he's not 6'10". So I wonder. I guess it's just personal preference on that. Obviously, they loved the one side versus the other. The pool was awesome. It was like deep in a cove, so it had some privacy
Mm-hmm.
there. But it gave me the same vibes. The lake side of the house gave me the same vibes as the other house they saw. Maybe a little bit more cleaned up, but yeah,
Right.
I liked it. Especially the newer side of the house. I loved Kathy's idea of taking and making the entryway in the new area. I thought that was,
Mm-hmm.
but again, that goes back to their real estate prowess. They clearly get
Right.
the game and they look at it differently than the average buyer. And yeah, I thought that was a great house. I almost thought they might buy that one.
Well, and that was funny with that one was it was 500,000 over their budget.
Yeah.
So
Wait, 500. Oh yeah. Three
yeah,
five. Yeah,
yeah, it
three
was
five.
three listed at 3.5 million, and their budget was
Yeah.
three. So,
Can you just wait? Stop and
um,
think about what you just said. 500,000 over someone's budget.
I own two houses, and together they're not worth 500,000.
You live in Lebanon, though. I mean, that does have some bearing on it.
Yeah, but I mean, I live the 800 square feet we have at the lake is worth more than the 3,000 square feet we have at Lebanon, and they still don't add
It's
up to
crazy. Yeah.
500,000. But now, just to give folks watching an idea, that house was located on Grand Cove in Portachima, and if you're on the water, Grand Cove, if you're coming, let's say from Frankie and Louis, and you take a right, so you go up the lake from like the 11-ish mile marker to, I don't remember exactly where Grand Cove is, but you see a big causeway and a bunch of beautiful houses really close to the MTI house, if you're familiar with that. But Grand Cove is tucked back in there. Um, but that property was really cool because, again, that cove going down in there is you end up kind of on a private lake as you get away from the main lake. It's kind of neat back there. But I really did think that all of the negatives would be uh, surpassed when they had a spot for Titus. Titus the gorilla, where the eagle was. I really thought we'd end up, a little bit closer with that one. But again, it didn't really have the dock they wanted. Most people who want to entertain and that sort of thing, back of a cove isn't prime location because they want to be in the crowd and in the people. So
I'm
I
not
don't know.
sure. I mean, like you said, they like to party. That's the other thing I liked about that house. It was divided, so it's like you could go to one
Mhm.
wing to get away from the. My wife would love that because I tend to want to stay up later, and she wants to go to bed. And I think Kathy and Steve might be somewhat similar because Steve, like he said, I want to jam my music. But what did he say at the end? I'm not paying a penny more than 2.5 million for this house, and which is
Right,
why you're not making an offer 1 million under asking.
right. Well, and that funny enough though, that one was withdrawn. It did not sell. So for whatever reason, we know the Strix didn't buy it, and we don't know the feedback from the other stuff.
What's the
But yeah, that
conspiracy
one
in all
didn't
this,
sell.
Ramsey? What's the conspiracy that this whole thing was staged? That's my conspiracy.
I think that when we interview Peggy and Steve, we'll get to dive in more. I think that they probably have a hard time legally getting into some of these houses, and people, like, it sounds glamorous to have your property on HGTV, and it sounds glamorous to be featured on TV trying to buy a house. But when you go through the legal red tape of what would be on TV, I think you find some issues. I think Peggy will touch on some of that a little bit, and I know from some of the rumors that I've heard that it's a struggle. So we'll talk more about that. I don't think there's some grand conspiracy. I think that you have buyers and sellers, and finding those people that make sense. I think it's just more difficult than we can ever really imagine. What do you think? I mean, are you a conspiracy theorist? Do you think it's all TV?
No, I don't
Like,
buy into the conspiracies too much. There's a handful, I'm gonna actually lean, and maybe conspiracy is a strong word, that there's more staging than than an audience realizes. That's what I'm gonna say. That doesn't
yeah,
mean it's not entertaining. It's TV. I mean, it's like reality TV. It's
right,
not reality when there's a camera crew in your house. So the fact that they ever called it reality TV in the first place is kind of like an oxymoron. But
right.
again, my feedback, and I was texting with Kathy and Steve, and I said, the one thing that I hope they get right if this continues, maybe a second season, is I want to see a more extended storyline. You know,
Hmm.
everything seems so open ended, and it just, as we mentioned, like there's no finish. You could
Right.
totally run with
There's
that
no
one.
climax
There's no
swings.
climax, yeah, and that's
Um,
disappointing for any couple.
you know, last week we were talking about swingers. This week we're talking about mutual satisfaction, or just satisfaction,
Yeah, I
or
mean, no
climaxing.
one's climaxing here, so it's like,
Hey, hey, though, I was on social media yesterday, and Peggy closed a property on the Celebration Cruise boat.
what do you mean she?
That was kind
Oh,
of
as
cool.
in like they did the closing on it. That's a great idea.
Yeah, they
That's a great
did.
idea.
They did the closing on the boat, and I thought that was pretty cool. And maybe, and I'm not trying to start any rumors here, but maybe that's something we'll see going forward. I don't believe they're filming season 2 yet. I don't think they've committed to season 2, but maybe we'll see some more fun things like that, and kind of go on. All right, so um, we've mentioned it numerous times, but it's time to talk about the Octagon houses. You've you've brought it up a handful of times. It seems like those you kind of enjoyed those. We know Andy and was it Matt? Andy and I don't remember
I
their
didn't get their
names.
names.
Sorry, fellas. I don't remember your names. I think Andy was one of them. Pretty sure. We would know, but if we filmed this at a regular time, but basketball is more important. And also, you did have a little accident with Winter yesterday, and I hope her arm
It's
is
true.
better.
Yeah,
So that
yeah,
also, it's not just the basketball,
yeah. So fuck off. So
but
fuck off.
so, but let's talk about them. Let's talk about the Octagon houses. For those of you who don't know where they are, they're on HH and they're off Hogan Drive, which is right by Little Rizzo's and Barbecue and all that. Just, I don't know, as you come up over the first big hill on HH and you come down the hill and it turns to the right, they're kind of right there. They're off of the golf course. Tell me your thoughts on them, and then I'll give you some background into them.
Two things. Plus side on golf course. That's cool. The
Mm-hmm.
I guess I don't know if downside or quirky side was the openness, the accordion
Right.
doors, the fact that you can't take a loud shit without it being heard. Those sorts of things. I think make yeah. I don't know that I would like that. I agree with the buyers that would be odd. And like they even said, maybe the building codes back in 1985 didn't require, yeah,
Ceilings.
yeah, yeah, or wall to ceiling, yeah, um,
It didn't even zoom in, but the one door was actually trimmed out and cut with a corner on it
the,
to meet the pitch of
The
the
good old
roof there.
days.
It was
The
kind
good
of,
old days of
yeah.
just rigging it
Well,
however you need to.
it wasn't even like DIY Ozark. Like it was legit. The door was made for that angle, which you got to do what you got
Yep.
to do. It's cool. I've been in, matter of fact, the first Octagon house, the completed one, we'll leave it there. We'll call it that. The completed one. I had a client really interested in those. What's oddly enough, or what's odd about those properties is at the time when this was for sale, that wasn't an established HOA. So there was some potentials there that kind of made my folks decide not to go with it because you didn't have any guarantees that there was going to be an HOA. You didn't have any idea of what the cost for the HOA were going to be. But overall, my lady that was looking at it, her grandson was moving in with her, and it was a perfect fit to throw him in the basement. He could come home late at night. He could go down in that basement. She could have peace and nature and golf and all the things that go with it. So, so it was they were really cool, and it was a shame to not see them. They actually were then listed again as all 3 or 4 units together, so somebody could have owned more of like a multifamily thing.
Did it mention how close to the water it was, or not close to the water?
She mentioned that you could go down Hogan and get to the water. I don't remember there being an access at the end of Hogan for Four Seasons people, but I'll take Peggy's word for it. She said there was. Um, so, but I mean, being able to walk out your backyard and play a few rounds of golf, I think
Those buyers didn't strike me as golfers. Maybe I'm wrong.
they didn't, but they said they'd take lessons maybe. I don't know. There was something really cool about those little. There's things. There's a couple of those developments on HH. There's the treetop lofts too. As you go on down HH, there's some of those down there. Again, those are folks building building houses and properties to fit the area, and it's a little difficult.
Yeah.
Um, so let's talk about. So we know they didn't like the first one that was done because they wanted to redo them. So Peggy's like, "Hey, great, let's talk and let's see if we can buy one before it gets any work into it. You can finish it yourself." What would you have done to one of those? We don't have
I
much
wouldn't have
time,
bought it.
but I
I
want
wouldn't have
to.
bought it. But I'm
Period.
no, I'm living on the water. I'm buying on the water. That would be a prerequisite for me. So I wouldn't. I mean, maybe as an investment, and even when you mentioned buying all together, that perked my ears a little bit because I do think that as an investor at the lake, I do believe that the second tier and so on are probably as good, if not a better opportunity for rental because you can price them right. And
Right.
and oftentimes somebody coming down to rent anyway, it's not like they have a boat, so a view of the lake's important, but being on the lake is probably less important. So yeah, I mean, I'll just say it right now, Ramsey, is we when we move there and in the coming years, I want to be an investor and own property at the lake. So it's gonna be high on my bucket list, but I got to build my own house first.
Gotcha. Yeah, you probably need to get started. I think I've seen maybe some plans or
Yeah, no,
something.
we scratch those. We're going back to the drawing board. I want to find a builder first. So if you're listening to this and you know of a good builder who's a custom, I don't really want to hire a big company. Kind of want to do a smaller company and I have a little nod in the media game, so maybe I can bring some attention to a builder as well on my own personal build. So maybe there's a little work we could do, but yeah,
We're going back old school. We're bartering
hey,
here.
you know,
Like that's what we're doing. And I that's how my mom raised me. Uh, bartered. My mom was a hairdresser, and we got free antiques for haircuts and all you name it. Like it ain't gonna bother me none to go back down that rabbit hole
I'm in, man.
and live that
I
world.
I do want to ask, since we've brought this up to on this particular episode, you're doing a great job with calls to action and asking people to engage with us. So I'm going to ask some engagement, and as I've been scrolling the comments in YouTube, You may not have noticed this because it was on a short video, and I just realized that I don't even know how old it was. But the comment was, let's see, I got trolled. Let's just put it that way, which happens often, of course, as anybody knows. But it was something to the effect of, uh, "Why do you feel the need to cuss?" It was actually on the video with Kelly and Brian about their $10 million house, and it says it's unprofessional. They gave me three adjectives. I can't find it now, of course. And then said it gives a bad name. That's the problem, is you give a bad name to the Lake of the Ozarks
By saying
by
the curse
cussing
word.
on videos. Yeah, which my response was PC. I just said I'm unapologetic for being authentic and real. It's just passion. Um, but at the same token, I wanted to say, like, when at what point in time is it okay? Like, I'm not judging you for not cussing. Should I say that you probably wear a dress and ride a horse and buggy every day because that because you don't cuss? No, that would be ignorant. Why would I say something like that? So why do people feel the need to do that? So I'm curious, and there's a question here to follow this up. Is cussing offensive to you? There it is. I found it. Why do you feel a need to curse? It's unprofessional, cheesy, and I'm low class. Sadly, it makes the Lake Ozark area look hillbilly. I know a lot of super
It,
wealthy, well educated, eloquent, successful people that cuss a lot. Gary Vee, to name one. I guess we're all cheesy, low class, unprofessional hillbillies, man.
I don't get it. I've never understood how words hurt people.
Yeah.
like I don't get it. They're words.
It's an adjective. It's really what it is. I
I'm
mean,
like,
except when I used it
you know,
as a verb. Yeah, you. But
I think I think people just need to lighten up. I think they need to understand at some point we'll probably end up having disclosures on every piece of content that we consume that will tell us like trigger warnings. And like I even notice, like, I don't know if you're when you're watching TV now, like if you watch a regular show, it's like rated R, and like and it'll say because smoking.
yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
you, actually,
I mean, and that
you know that you mentioned it. You know there is going to become warnings. You know what the next? You know what the warnings are going to? We're going to start seeing on social media.
what
Whether it's AI
AI,
generated. Yeah, yeah,
right? Yeah, YouTube's
yeah.
doing
I
that
know.
now
I know.
already.
Which I love. I love because
Um,
it reinforces and rewards authenticity. Which Diggins drums 3260. Cursing is authentic. Not cursing is not. And so why wouldn't you rather see the real side of me than the fake side?
I'm all for the cursing. Drop the f bombs. Drop the
You're
s
more
bombs.
PC than
Like
me though, dude.
yeah, but like I know when I can throw a bomb out there and have a little fun, and I get it. Like I'm not gonna hate on people for feeling that way. It's find the positive. I like the engagement. I like I like being able to have that conversation. Um, it depends on what day of the week. I might troll back. I might, or I might just let it go. You never know.
Yeah, I don't ever troll back. I bite my tongue. You win with kindness. You respond with kindness. That was about as trolly as I get, which is I'm unapologetic for being real. Um, but it's not worth it. And again, to your point, I don't judge you for not cussing. I don't.
Right,
I'm a slim guy. I don't judge you for not being slim. Like who gives a shit? Like to each their own. And why
right.
can't the politics, man? And which I have a post coming out on TikTok here soon about that. But the divisiveness in this country, man, and I'll end this with by teasing that if China invaded our country tomorrow, we're gonna come together. We better come
Right.
together.
Oh yeah, for
But
sure.
but but
For
but when
sure.
you look at our world right now, our country, it's so divided. Red versus blue, conservative versus liberal.
Hmm.
And they're so harsh. And it's like, man, everybody's entitled to vote the way they want and have their own opinion. We don't have to be so rough and harsh on them. But it's just
All we really need to agree on is that Taylor Swift isn't a witch and she's pretty amazing. Like, that's pretty much my stance.
Yeah.
Like, just what would Taylor do? WWTD. What would Taylor
Yeah.
do? We're running up against the end here. We kind of got off track.
Real talk.
Again, I want to ask folks, if you're watching this, you've made it this far, you've listened to the rambling and the nonsense and Jeff cussing, and you're not offended by it.
Or you are.
We are going to be interviewing the stars of the show, whether it's buyers, sellers, real estate agents, you name it. We're going to be talking to them. Would you rather see it in this format where, there'd be right between the two of us? Would you rather see separate content? Do you want us to go on location? How can we make this more engaging for you guys and get you the info? Like, how can we unpack what these agents go through, what these buyers, what these sellers go through? What can we do to keep you guys watching and keep you entertained? We're having a hell of a good time making this, and I know some folks in the comments have really enjoyed it. We want to absolutely, without a doubt, we want to keep doing it. We just want to know how we can get your eyeballs
I'll tell you,
your ears and your
I'm going to give
eyeballs.
my opinion. I'm going to give my thought. I already did about the just splitting them up. I would love to go on location. I think that we should, as often as possible, do the live interviews with the people in person, if we can. Now, I realize logistically that's not always going to be possible, but I would say that would make it more fun.
Awesome. Well, I'm all for whatever we can do. Let's hear it in the comments. Again, we thank you for watching. Please, if you get a second, hit that like button for us. It really helps get the word out there. Share it, subscribe, all the good YouTube, Facebook, social media stuff. Like, we just want to get this stuff out to as many people as possible and have some fun with it. Next week, we'll be back to our normal recording time, I think, unless, I don't know, badminton championships come up or something. But either way, thanks for checking it out. We look forward to it. Lakefront Empire Unpacked. I'm Ramsey, the real estater. This is Jeff with Fitzer Media. We don't have a nickname for him yet. We'll get there. Peace.